So, folks, far away, I'm going to allow Andrew Flint, who jumped out in the couple of today. So, Andrew, it is over to you to start off with your sporting hot topic of the week.
Well, we've all touched on this already a little bit, but I think it is such an important one. It's the safety of players and pitch invasions in particular. Andy Mack mentioned the Billy Sharp incident. It was chilling, to be honest. When you see pitch invasions, you see a lot of bravado and the drunken fans come on and they're sticking two fingers up at players. Oh, let's see if I can get a selfie. And it's concerning, but it's not. A lot of the time the incidents are not physically dangerous, but this was that was just chilling. The guy was knocked out straight cold. But another side of it I wanted to highlight in particular was the after the Crystal Palace Everton game, when the Everton fan confronted Patrick Vieira. Now Patrick Vieira was in the middle of the pitch, in the middle of a crowd which he didn't want to be in. An Everton fan goading him in the face. Now I'm not trying to pick on Everton as a club here, just simply this particular fan. Vieira, lashes out a leg at him, and I don't know the extent of injuries if there were any, but when you're under pressure like that, when thousands of fans in occasions like this are breaking the law by entering the pitch, who's right and who's wrong? Well, nobody wins at it. The security simply has to be better. Now, how can the security be better? Do you simply line more stewards around the pitch? Will that realistically stop a surge of thousands of people? It's very hard to say that. So if you really do want to keep people off the pitch, I worry we go back to the 1980s. Cages, fences. Well, look, how far do we go? That for me is a serious issue, but something needs to change because this is getting worse.
I go back to what Andy Mack said earlier on, and Lisa's put into our work chat a situation. There was a pitch invasion in Semple Stadium today. Very regularly at half-time in matches in rugby and in Gaelic games around the world, you'll have kids on the pitch at half-time. You'll have people coming onto the pitch after the match, and Andy Mack and I discussed this on Friday, where there is no aggression, no violence. Sometimes there could be, but again, the fans have spent the whole game sitting together, rugby. So, it is a different situation. But again, Isa, you're right. In hurling, they have like big lumps of stick, to beat people with. And I agree with you fully. I do think something has to be done, and I think it goes maybe to the culture of the whole game. Andy Mack, I'm going to come to you. I know we've stolen your thunder on this because you had this as a topic. So now you have to go up with something even better first tonight.
Well, aside from that, and I've actually just seen the video of the Aston Villa goalkeeper getting punched going across, and he even has a steward and two stewards with him while he's being escorted away while he gets punched or slapped in the face. Big thing that I think needs to be addressed. The other two topics that I came across this week that I thought were quite interesting was first one, although it's not so much a physically draining sport, I did notice the Formula One ramming up how great it was that the hot conditions being back in Barcelona today to make it more challenging for drivers. And my immediate thought was, if the media is saying that let's make it these extremities for professional athletes or drivers in this case is such a great thing, looking forward to something like Qatar and the sort of crazy weather that we've had over the last year or two, I think this is something that's going to go forward. Where are we putting people at risk with extreme heat, not looking after them? We were promised Qatar would be fully aircon stadiums and yada yada yada. We saw in Seville the extreme heat. I saw one of the games in Italy, Florence, played in an evening game. The players were sweating buckets after 10 minutes. Water breaks aren't really, water breaks every 25 minutes with the intensity that football's played at these days. The sort of training and the fact in cricket and Formula One, people are wearing helmets, can't stop for a drink. Then you've got all kinds of sports. If the media is pushing this narrative of let's make it more intense and more dangerous I mean, what on earth were they doing? And my last quick topic of the week was I thought it was very brave to see a rugby player and a football player come out as gay this week, and I think it's a big forward step. However, after seeing this absolutely insanity of pitch invasions, if that's what's going to happen, are they making a target for themselves? If this is the kind of thing that's now acceptable around sport, I thought it was extremely brave of them to make that step forward. I think the first to do so in the UK, me and Mr. Flint were covering this earlier in the week. First to do so in the UK for about 25 years for football. Huge step, and I think they should be applauded for being the ones that are likely to take the most stick until we get over this chapter of it not being an allowed thing within male and female sport.
Male sport, Andy. And in certain types of sport as well, because in female sport, no one in tennis, for example, even football, there's no comments going from the stands when the Chelsea star players hug and kiss each other. No one says a word. It is a very, very strange thing, seen as a weakness. And we've Isak can mention this even better than me, where we had like a former Irish international saying that gays don't really play rugby. They're better in like sort of the entertainment or art, or maybe as hairdressers. Again, we hear the abuse given to men and shout at them that they would always be the subservient, that if you're gay, you're somehow weak, that you're a woman. And it just that ridiculous, stupid thing that comes out. I mean, Jake Daniels, when he came out, the Blackpool player, coming out as gay, he shouldn't have to. He shouldn't have to say a word. He should just go and live his life as what it is. But I know for myself, from speaking with former, well, he's now retired, a professional player who's playing in Russia, and speak with him about being gay and why would he not come out. And his answer was, why should I? For who am I coming out? And I said, would you be bothered about it in the dressing room? And he said, no. He said, they know. Like, we've been out, like, when there's like the husbands and wives, I bring in my partner and there's no problem. But as he said, that he might not be signed with another club, because again, the people in charge of the money hall think, well, if he's gay, he might be a bit weak. He might be. It's just ridiculous thing. So I agree with that. I think it's a great one, and no, well done for pointing it out. Isol, last one to you before we run out into the Big Fat Filthy Quiz. So over to you.
I'm going to segue very strangely from what is a very important story, I suppose, for young people. As Andy has pointed out, I suppose it shouldn't have to be a thing where you need to say it, but also it is trying to perhaps make young people feel calmer in the fact, or more secure in the fact, that it shouldn't matter to you being a professional athlete or not. I'm segueing from there to more golf and Saudi Arabia, of all places. So it transpires that while we have seen Saudi sports washing be quite successful in Newcastle, who are about to have pretty much a replica of the Saudi national team's jersey as their alternate kit, we are seeing in the sport of golf the Saudi efforts, led primarily by Greg Norman, to sports wash are actually proving extremely unsuccessful. So this week in the PGA Tour, Phil Mickelson would have been due to defend his win from last year, and last year he became the oldest player to win a Masters at 50 and 11 months and a number of days, which were significant. But he didn't turn up this year because of the fallout of a controversy that has basically gone on for most of the year, since early February, when comments he made about the Saudis and their breakaway tour came out. And even down to this weekend, we've seen Sergio Garcia, who last week said how much he couldn't wait to be finished with the PGA Tour, being booed on a hole, because basically he's one of the players who is confirmed now essentially as moving to the breakaway Saudi Tour. And it's a really interesting dynamic to see in a sport like golf, which again is it's completely individual, save for one-off tournaments like the Ryder Cup, that there seems to be a big gap between the players who are openly coming out and saying, actually, no, we're not going to take Saudi money. Yes, it might be astronomical. We're already being highly paid anyway. But to see players appear to take, whether it's a moral stance or one based on decent PR advice, but they're coming out and they're being quite vocal in the fact that they won't play in the Saudi tournament. And it may be Saudi Arabia's, as a state, their one sports washing attempt that they probably thought would be easily successful due to the amount of money and the individual players, but it is actually turning into a big talking point in golf, and it's turning into something where we are seeing even retired players coming out now and making their views quite publicly known. Nick Faldo over the last 24 hours when commenting on the Phil Mickelson situation. But in comparison with football, there seems to be a moral compass that, whether, again, as I said, it may be PR driven, but a moral compass that does exist for these individual players, that they're willing to talk about it. And I think that's interesting. We haven't heard a Newcastle player come out and say, actually, you know, I've thought about it. This is a difficult area for me. It's a grey line here with Saudis. And I think it's interesting to see in a sport like golf that doesn't strike anyone as one that would be so strong on an issue, to see fans even booing a player, which is very un-golf-like, put it that way. But to also see that months on, Phil Mickelson, his comments have been so poorly received that he hasn't even been able to defend his title in one of the biggest tournaments. And he has his following, for anyone who has ever attended a tournament that Phil has played in, his followers are insane. He could be driving on a par 5 and they're shouting, "Get in the hole, Phil," because they have an insane belief. And they're different to any other group of fans. I've been to way too many golf tournaments. But to see that level of turning against him, and especially against an American where he feels he can't participate in an American tournament, it's interesting. And it might be a turn to some extent in how we see the Saudi efforts in sports washing. Even if it's only in one sport, it's a big step and it's a positive one.
Okay, I'm used to that, because again, I always say, like, you know, I worked for 2 years in Saudi Arabia, so you know, I can't turn around and say no, it's all bad. I don't agree with how the country is governed. I don't agree with how the treatment of people. These, like, I mean, when we talk about, like, you know, slave workers and so on, I think I said to Andy Mack before. I mean, when you go into Saudi Arabia, your passport is taken away. You have to ask to get it back if you want to leave the country, and only your employer will decide if you can leave. I'm, you know, a white Irish person, and if you're a person from Bangladesh, for example, it's a whole lot worse, and you get a whole lot worse paid, worse conditions. So, yeah, I think it is definitely the right direction. Okay, we're